We good to go? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and all of those who dialed in. I'm Constable Rob Carver, Public Information Officer with the Winnipeg Police Service this morning. When we came into work this morning, we saw our inbox was full with questions from pretty much every media outlet looking for a chance to interview somebody regarding developments yesterday where we had advised we handed a letter to protesters on Memorial Boulevard. I think last week Chief Smythe and Superintendent DeLaw spoke very clearly about what we had been doing and why we had been doing it. We were asked regularly about what the end date looked like. I'm confident to say that the end date looks like it is now approaching, and we're going to wrap this up. I think again, echoing what the Chief and Superintendent DeLaw had said, was that we were very consistent in our strategy, and that strategy has proved to be successful. I will now take questions from the media. I know we've got a number of people who dialed in.
Okay, first up is Steve from Canadian Press.
Oh, hi there. I'm just wondering, this is a different demonstration with use of vehicles and the occupation of a street for quite a long time. Are you worried that this might set a precedent for a future protest? And what have you learned in terms of dealing with a future protest that might involve the occupation of the street?
Well, I want to echo what was said last week, again by the Chief and Superintendent DeLaw. This is not Ottawa, and ours has been a different scenario right from the outset. We did have protesters at that intersection for quite a while. The impact on the community was minimal. We know that there were some complaints initially. We've used the same set of tactics and overall strategy that we have employed at many demonstrations, which is one of liaising with the people involved and attempting to negotiate, and we've been successful at that. This is not the first time we've utilized this. We've done it in numerous other situations. We have had groups that have decided to occupy a particular area of the city for some time, and we've done everything we can to facilitate that sort of peaceful protest with minimal impact on the community. I think what we're hoping, I know what we're hoping to achieve here, is that looking at this one currently as it is, and maybe in hindsight, we're going to use this as an opportunity to educate both the public as well as community leaders as to what sort of what they can expect from the Winnipeg Police Service in terms of protests. It would be foolish to say that we think that this is a one-off. We are seeing what happened in Ottawa and variations of it copied not only across, or mimicked not only across the country, but really across the world. I believe that how Winnipeg Police Service has dealt with this has been the most effective balance between the rights of protesters and the safety of everyone involved, as well as minimizing the impact in the community. And we will go forward with the same strategy. What we've learned is that what we've done has been successful, and I think it reinforces our commitment to continue with that sort of strategy.
You have a follow-up, Steve?
Yeah, any word on charges? Are there charges being laid, or have you made a commitment, any sort of commitment to perhaps not lay charges if all the vehicles are gone by this afternoon?
Our letter that was released yesterday was pretty clear. We expect everyone to be gone by today at 5 p.m., 1700. And what we see this morning is movement that suggests to us that that's going to be unfolding as we hoped. If there are charges that have been laid up till now, and we've been really silent on that, once this is wrapped up, I think the WPS will be in a much better position to explain exactly what happened in terms of, did we get people ticketed? No one has been charged that I'm aware of. I don't foresee the sort of scenario unfolding in Ottawa where we're looking at people historically to say You know, you were there too long. Our deadline is 5 p.m. today, and if everyone is either in compliance or in the process of complying, then I don't foresee charges would be forthcoming.
Brittany from Global.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Brittany.
Good morning still, I guess. I was just down at the protest site speaking with one of the organizers who says they are not planning on moving. They are moving to Memorial Park. They've set up a fire already there. Some of the vehicles they will be moved. Others they might move onto the street and pay for parking if need be. Is that good enough for the Winnipeg Police, or must they leave and vacate even the park as well?
Well, you're not going to like my answer, but I don't want to speak to hypotheticals. And I know that we have officers out there this morning. We've been working throughout the past few weeks. This is an ongoing situation. And it's been a dynamic situation. It's been changing every few days. If we have people moving to areas that are not blocking traffic, that they're on public land, we've got other people who are on public land. If that's the situation, I think we'll have to look at it as it unfolds with the overriding view that what we've been doing is what we want to be consistent in doing, which is minimizing use of force and minimizing anything that would be viewed as heavy-handed to facilitate people's ability to peacefully protest. And if someone wants to park and pay for parking on a public street for the foreseeable future, if they're not breaking any bylaws, then that is certainly their right. We've had people on Memorial Park for long periods of time in situations previous to this. If it is not impacting people in the neighborhood, we've been successful in eliminating effectively all of the noise complaints, and there were significant ones at the beginning. If the nature of this protest changes, then how we deal with it, we will try and be consistent, but people still have the right to peacefully protest. So if there is not traffic disruptions, if there's not an impact in the community, and we still have people in the area, that's something that we're going to have to look at, but we're not trying to move people out of any area, and we won't in this protest or future protests if there's not a specific impact.
You have a follow-up, Brittany?
I do think. What's changed to give protesters a deadline of 5 p.m. today? You've talked in the past about negotiating with them, opening some streets, working together. What was the change that said 5 p.m. today you leave or face possible arrest and charges?
Well, you win, Brittany, because really I thought that would have been the question, and no offense to anyone else. There's a lot of good points to be made here, but that is, it was in my mind really the critical question, what changed? What changed is in our ongoing discussions with people there, we realized that the WPS would not be able to assist protesters in achieving the goals that they had stated. And I believe that in our discussions with people on scene, with protesters, they also realized that that was looking like those goals wouldn't be achieved by this strategy. Because we've developed really good dialogue with people, I think when we both reached that conclusion, what looked obvious to everyone was that the end of this was approaching. And I think once that started to unfold over the last couple of days, it meant for us the beginning of the end. We put out the letter yesterday to sort of solidify what we were expecting, so there was no ambiguity, but that process was already in play. Those, I think that was the consensus of not only WPS senior officers who are working to manage this, but the people who are on scene.
Josh from CTV.
Hi, Constable. I'm just
Hi.
wondering if you can explain under what circumstances someone may be charged with intimidation, as mentioned in the release yesterday to media. But what kind of circumstances might that charge be laid? I guess I know you said no charges have been laid yet, but I'm just sort of wondering about that one.
So I have our letter in front of me, and unless I'm missing something, I don't see the phrase intimidation used. There are a number of sections, legal elements that are available to us, and they were released in the letter. that was delivered to protesters. Certainly criminal code charges, but not limited to mischief. We have the ability to seize vehicles used in the commission of an offense, regardless of Emergencies Act. We have the ability to lay various charges under the Highway Traffic Act. And as always, police have exercised discretions in countless situations, not just protests, but, people get pulled over and have had a highway traffic infraction, and an officer will say, you've made an illegal right turn. I'm going to give you a caution today, but please be aware that the tag may, the ticket may have been this much if we had done it. This is done every single day. I mean, I have a personal experience where I know someone who was in a bit of a dispute with a neighbor. Things got heated. Could criminal code charges arise from that? Absolutely, they could. Is it in anyone's interest? Well, that's what our officers have to look at. And we make those decisions all the time in light of what's our goal and what's the best way to get there. That's what we'll be doing here as well. Again, there are bylaw charges, but I think it's premature to talk about what we'll do if what we're seeing is things unfolding the way we hope they will. If there are some people left and we're still in discussion with them, we'll see what 5 o'clock looks like today, but I'm not going to hypothesize.
Follow up, Josh?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, it sounds like protesters have sort of said that they're going to be moving out some of the bigger vehicles, but still making some sort of presence there. I'm just wondering if have you got tow truck companies sort of lined up to move vehicles out when the deadline hits at 5 p.m. If they aren't moved, I'm just sort of wondering what that's going to look like at 5 p.m. if people are still lingering in the area with vehicles or with other equipment that police have asked that people move out.
Again, I want to say that we will be consistent with the sort of strategies and tactics we've been employing. If that's a situation that unfolds, we've got teams that have been working daily, looking at making preparations. I'm not going to tell you what those preparations are. We certainly are prepared for various contingencies, and people staying is one possible contingency, and we've looked at what resources we may need to deploy. That's not necessarily saying that they will be deployed immediately at 5:01.
Mario from Radio Canada?
Yeah, thank you for this. Well, like some of my colleagues mentioned, we are seeing some people getting installed on Memorial Park. You mentioned that you'll have to assess the situation, but can you speak a bit more about what would be a significant impact on the population that would make you act more?
Well, I think there's been two issues that have affected the downtown that have been raised by people in the area, and one is impacts on traffic and on commuters. If that's mitigated, then there's nothing to talk about. The other has been noise, and up till now, of recent, we've certainly been able to mitigate that. There have been people who have been actively protesting at various areas within the ledge for a number of months. I believe there is a protest going on the east side of the legislature. It is a right to peacefully protest. And what we're trying to do is eliminate the effects of a protest that have really, to some varying degrees, impacted the citizens of this city. If people are looking to be on public land and continue to protest in a peaceful way that does not impact on people in the area, whether it's by noise or traffic flows, then we'll work to see what that looks like with minimal disruption. But again, we balance, and we have always balanced the needs of, and our priority is public safety, but we want to protect citizens' charter rights to peaceful protest, and we will continue to balance those two objectives.
Mario, you have a follow-up?
Yes. What would you say to people, residents who have been asking for almost 3 years now, 3 months, 3 weeks now for a firmer stance? What do you say to these people?
This is a very polarizing situation, and we've got people who are asking for a firmer stance. I can tell you we had numerous noise complaints when we looked at it. A lot of the complaints were repeat complaints from a particular relatively small group of citizens. That's not to minimize the impact that the noise has had on those citizens, or in any way attempt to delegitimize their complaints. But really, we've had officers on scene since day one. We worked to move a reduction in noise complaints from all hours to only between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., ultimately moving to just to 2 minutes of honking a day, twice a day. And I believe that's stopped as well. So if people are still have complaints, we'll look to see if those are legitimate complaints, and we will work again to attempt to mitigate those. I understand people haven't been happy, some people haven't been happy, but myself, my colleagues who have been up here have been adamant in explaining that the strategy we've used has been incredibly successful in getting to the point where we are today. No one has been hurt. We did have one person drive through, but from a policing standpoint, we really haven't had any complaints about from people in the area. There's been allegations that people have been accosted. We have not seen that. We have officers on scene 24/7, and that's not what we saw. So I understand there's been comments in the media, comments by some civic leaders talking about disruptions, and we need to balance those complaints with what we're actually seeing in the ground, and we simply weren't seeing that. So while people weren't happy, I get that. On the other side of this are people who are not happy that they've been moved and viewed this in a different lens. I think Winnipeg Police Service has been able to balance those. We're not going to make everyone happy for sure, but this has been the least impactful of any protest that I've seen in the country, and I can tell you that our officers remain proud of how we've handled it. And it's been so successful that we will continue to use this as a blueprint for how we will deal with things. There is no expectation whatsoever that we are going to move in and bodily start to drag people out of an area. That's not how we want this to end, and it's not how it's going to end here.
Chris from the Free Press.
Yeah, this latest approach to bring this to an end, has it been influenced at all by the mood at City Hall or discussions with any members of City Council?
All of the decisions, and I'm speaking as PIO here, I am not part of the actual decision-making process. My job is to convey that. But my understanding here is that all of the decisions regarding this protest from day one have been made in a policing environment with the understanding of police use of force and police use of powers, and that they have not been subjected to political or outside influence. Having said that, I mean, we're trying to listen to, as I've been saying here, we're trying to listen to the needs and the complaints of the community, as well as the rights and the concerns of protesters. But those aren't political decisions, those are community decisions.
You have a follow-up, Chris?
Yeah, what kind of presence are we going to see from police come 5 p.m.? I mean, any kind of specialty unit, will any be on hand?
As I said earlier, we have we plan for contingencies. That's part of what we're expected to do. We're good at it. I'm a member of the crowd management unit. I know we've had officers working constantly, looking at what's required. But as Superintendent Dalal has said, we aren't going to be talking about contingencies and what those tactics will look like in advance. We haven't done that. We won't do that here. If and when we need to respond, it's going to unfold on scene, and everyone will be aware of it. We're not going to discuss what those eventualities might look like under the theory that this might all be moot by 5 p.m.
Peggy from CBC.
Hi there. I wanted to go back to Brittany's question. Can you explain and elaborate what you mean when you say that protesters aren't going to achieve what they want, or when you realize that? What did they want to achieve there, and what did police want to achieve?
Well, police wanted to achieve what we've achieved, which is minimizing the impact on the community with allowing protesters to maintain their constitutional right to a peaceful protest. And I believe we feel we've been successful in that. There are people on both sides who are not happy, and they will continue to be not happy. We've had to balance those, and any balancing act always leaves people at one end and the other not entirely satisfied. In terms of the protesters, I'm not an expert in this. I haven't been fully briefed, but I know that some of the demands of the protesters on Broadway or Memorial were very high-level issues that no longer were looking to be totally relevant in terms of the landscape here in Manitoba. We're looking at a significant reduction in mandates here in the near future. Those were some of the original requests of the protesters. Broader societal issues and political issues are above and beyond what you're going to see at a civic level or at a provincial level, and I believe the protesters came to the realization that those objectives would not likely be achieved by remaining on Memorial.
You have a follow-up, Peggy?
Yes, I do. Or a different question, actually. We heard that there's a convoy coming from Highway 59. I'm wondering if Winnipeg Police Service is prepared to deal with that, or if there's a plan to also deal with that convoy coming this way in terms of everything else you have going on today.
We expect that the disruptions in the downtown area and in the city will be, or specifically in Broadway and Memorial, will be over either at 5 p.m. today or relatively soon after that. We have plans to deal with that if it doesn't unfold in the way we've indicated it needs to. We are aware and we have intelligence of other situations, and I can assure you that we have plans in place should that present itself as a concern rather than just a hypothetical one. Yes, we do, but I'm not prepared to discuss what those are.
Mark from City?
Hi there. Thank you for doing this. We were also down at the protest this morning and spoke to people who live and work in the area. One person particularly said that they were concerned about their safety and they feel intimidated. And they were very disturbed to hear that the protest was not leaving downtown. It was simply moving to the park off the road, and they were worried this would just give a home base for further occupation. What do you say to citizens that live and work downtown who are feeling that way about what's happening?
I think this becomes a bit of a political discussion, not a police discussion. I think there are going to be people, whenever there's a protest, who are not happy with the position of the protesters. And I think in the climate we live in now in 2022, there's a fair degree of polarization. I can tell you that while people have made comments that they do not feel safe downtown, we have officers who are on scene 24/7. I've personally spoken to many of those officers who have said consistently the same message, that this is one of the most reasonable and most welcoming group of protesters they've ever encountered. That is from frontline uniform officers standing on Memorial up into including senior officers who've been in negotiations with the leaders. So while I understand that people are saying they're not happy and some people feel that the situation is intimidating, I think that is not to be unexpected when people hold vastly differing views, but that does not mean that the feelings of intimidation are actually based on reality or actually what police and law enforcement would view as intimidating. And we see examples of intimidating behavior all the time. I think we are pretty good at being able to assess the difference between what is in fact real intimidating behavior and what are perceptions. And I don't want to minimize those perceptions, but we can't alter people's perceptions. Our attempt is to keep everybody safe, and we've been able to do that.
Follow up, Mark?
Yes, please. While we were there this morning, we noticed that individuals were bringing in like diesel gasoline, and there's attempts to start vehicles. People who have been familiar with the protest can already see that the vehicles are dissipating. If 5 o'clock hits and there's still vehicles there because for one reason or another they can't get started, will police help them move out, or is there like a threshold that now tow trucks will be brought in to make sure those vehicles move? Will there be an allowance maybe till 6 or 6:30 if they're actively moving? Like, how will this go at 5?
Well, excuse me, I made it fairly clear that I'm not going to stand here and talk about what our specific plans are and tactics are. I can tell you, if you've seen people bringing in diesel, that if the situation was 4 or 5, days ago, would we have been, allowing people to come in to bring diesel in? Certainly that didn't happen in Ottawa. Our officers want to make sure that we are attempting to accommodate people to meet our stated goals, which is to have people gone. If they're bringing in diesel and trying to get vehicles started that have been stuck in one of the coldest periods the city has seen in a long time, there are some complexities with that. My understanding is starting a diesel that's been left in the cold is not a simple operation. If they're stuck and they continue to be stuck, again, we've had great dialogue with the people on scene. They may say, we're not going to be able to accommodate you, we're not getting this vehicle out of here because we can't. Can you help us get it moved? We are certainly going to be prepared to do that. Will we move it by force? Those are conjectural issues that I'm not prepared to look at. We can talk about them when 5 o'clock comes.
Is there anybody else on the call that I missed that wants to ask a question? All right, so we'll go back to Steve from Canadian Press. Any last follow-up questions, Steve?
Yeah, one of the disruptive impacts of this protest was the blocking of the main entrance to the legislature grounds. There were at times six large vehicles sort of parked outside there. This happened while the legislature was not in session, so the demand in terms of the number of people that would have to access the grounds was down from what will be in the spring and in the fall. But what happens next time when somebody wants to block access to the legislature grounds, and perhaps when it's in session?
As I said earlier, I think we've learned a lot about what this looks like from a policing standpoint. One of the things we have learned is that early attempts to liaise with protest leaders and establish dialogue has been very successful for us. And while I don't want to talk about hypotheticals, if that were the case, I think you would see dialogue utilized first and foremost, and people are going to have to be patient. I know our officers are patient. We work at training to be patient, and that has been very successful here. I think you can see the same sort of strategy will be employed in all sorts of future situations. If someone is, and we've seen this, we've seen, Portage in Maine blocked on Friday afternoons. We've seen, the St. James Bridge blocked on a Friday afternoon while people are trying to get out of downtown. We try and balance that with the rights of protesters and with the obvious impact on people who are attempting to just run their lives. What we are not prepared to do is go in heavy-handed and use strong-arm tactics and use of force and drag people and arrest people out of public spaces and exacerbate a problem. That's not what we've been doing because we've been successful at at our alternative, and we will continue to do that.
Anything else, Steve?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Brittany?
Yeah, thank you. Just one question. I'm wondering how the passing of the Emergency Measures Act played into any of this with police, or if that played a role at all.
In speaking with senior officers this morning, I can tell you it did not.
Anything more, Brittany? Okay, Josh?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about Convoy Avenue. It's been blocked off for emergency vehicles for some time now since the protest began 2 weeks ago. Will that open up at 5 p.m.?
I actually don't have an answer for you to that, but if you pop off an email, I'll try and make sure I do have it after the press conference. I don't have an answer at the moment. I haven't been briefed.
Anything else, Josh?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mario from Radio Canada?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on the Emergency Act. It's mentioned that there could be, it could be implied. What would make it used?
Well, one of the powers under that act is the ability to seize assets, equipment. If there were still people remaining on Broadway, large vehicles that were having an impact on the area. We're not talking about people, sitting in a public park, but if there are still vehicles downtown, we would certainly have the ability, and as we stated yesterday in the letter released to protesters, that is certainly something in our toolbox that we could utilize. The Emergencies Act is still in effect. It applies in this situation as well. We are attempting to be as the least intrusive strategy we can between now and 5, but it is certainly something that's available to us if that's the way this situation unfolds.
Maybe more, Mario?
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris from the Free Press?
Yes, what's been the cost in terms of policing, maintaining a presence, having officers down there around the clock in the city?
I don't have a number in front of me. I know that that Superintendent Dalal has indicated quite regularly that once this is over, we will have a summary. I know that a lot of the officers who have been there are officers who have been temporarily assigned from other operational duties, that they weren't extra people deployed at extra cost. That is not to suggest that there hasn't been some additional personnel and resource costs, but let's look at those numbers once this is actually completely wrapped up and we can look back in hindsight.
Anything more, Chris?
Yeah, just one more. There was the state of emergency amid officers being off on sick leave due to the pandemic, and then you have this situation where officers are having to be on scene around the clock. Has that resulted in any kind of shortages in other areas, or put a strain on resources in other areas, or specialty work not being done as a result of this?
I can tell you that Chief Smyth's declaration of some weeks ago regarding our concerns about pandemic and the service is still in effect. I can tell you that the effects of COVID on the organization have been lessening on a daily basis. We look at that every day, and we've been able to manage that quite well. In terms of a very separate issue, deployment of resources because of the protesters, we've certainly had to juggle some personnel. I don't think it has any noticeable impact on day-to-day police operations.
Peggy from the CBC?
Hi there. So I know that officers have been negotiating with protesters for quite a while now. I'm wondering if you think that are protesters who are leaving because of what happened in Ottawa? Has that set a precedent for demonstrators here in any way?
I'm often standing up here and asked to speak to motivation, and I usually give the same answer, which is I am absolutely unable to get inside someone's head and say what motivates them. I can't help but think that looking at what unfolded in Ottawa has made everybody reassess all sorts of things, including not only ongoing protests, but future protests. I would like to think that most of what's happened in Winnipeg is based on the work that officers have done in terms of dialogue and negotiation. Has that played into it? You'd have to go down on Memorial and ask the protesters themselves.
Anything more, Peggy?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Mark from City News? Are there any final questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll end this press conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.